Hi guys, and welcome to this lesson. Now let's talk about enharmonic spelling or enharmonic notes for a minute here, okay? And there are a couple of ways that we can determine them. And one is to see what note you're coming from, to a sharp or to a flat note. For example, if I take this C note here and sharpen it with a semitone, then I will arrive at a C sharp. Okay. Now, in the same time, if I take this D note here, all right, and flatten it a semitone, I will arrive to the same note, but this time I will call it D flat because I came from a D note. So one way to figure out how to call a sharp or flat note is basically to see where you came from. Okay, so for example, from the C here, sharpening that C will give you a C sharp, or flattening that D will give you a D flat. Okay. Now another and quite clear way to determine whether you're playing a sharp or flat note is to see what key you're playing in. For example, if you're playing in a sharp key, and we will learn about these things later on, but if you're playing in a sharp key, then you will have to call your altered notes sharps. Now, as opposed to this, of course, when you're playing in a flat key, then you'll have to call your altered notes flat notes. So again, for example, if I go to a D major scale and I will start with this same note here that we called a C sharp, I'm going to have to call this note a C sharp because I'm in a sharp tonality. Okay, so a D major is a 2 sharp tonality, so this note here will not be a D flat. I cannot call it a D flat because that just simply doesn't belong to that D tonality. Okay, it's still the same note, but it just does not belong to that tonality, which is very important to understand. Okay, so I will call this note a C sharp, and then I can happily go on and play that D major scale. And there is another C sharp up here as well. Okay. However, let's say if I were to play in D flat major, which is another key or another scale, well, another tonality, then this very same note will be called a D flat. I will have to call it D flat. This time it will not be a C sharp because simply C sharp does not belong to D flat. You understand what I mean here, I'm very sure. So once we got this D flat and we have the D flat major tonality, then we can happily carry on and play whatever we need to play in that D flat major tonality, and we'll have a G flat in there, we have an E flat, we have other flattened notes as well in that tonality. But just to understand, so depending on what key you're playing in, you will call your notes either flat or sharp notes as well. Okay. Now that's clear, let's just go through our notes here and let's find out what we can call them enharmonically. Okay, so we'll start on the C here. We'll leave that alone as a natural note. Now the next one will be our famous C sharp here, so we can call that a C sharp or a D flat. We'll go to a D, we'll leave that alone, and from the D, the next note will be a D sharp if we come from the D, or an E flat if we come from the E. Okay. Now, we'll leave the E alone, we'll leave the F alone, okay? Although the E could be an F flat, which we don't use a lot, but you will find later on. But for now, let's just leave it to being an E and the F being an F, okay? Now, from this F, if you go a half step above the F, you'll find an F sharp, or you could call it a G flat had you come from this G up above that note. So coming down from the G a half note, you will find a G flat. Okay, so it's either an F sharp coming from the F or a G flat coming from the G. Okay. Now we'll leave the G alone, and a half note semitone up from the G is a G sharp, or if you will, it could be an A flat had we come from this A and flatten that A with a semitone down to an A flat. Okay, now above the A here we'll have an A sharp or a B flat. So coming from the A, raising the A up a semitone, it will be an A sharp, or coming from the B and flattening the B with a semitone, it will be a B flat. Okay, and then we'll have a B, which we could also call a C flat, but let's just leave that alone for now as well, because that's for more complex studies later on. Okay, and then we're back to the C. So just to conclude, just one more time, coming from the C here, we have a C sharp or D flat, an E flat or D sharp, an E and F, an F sharp or G flat, an G sharp or A flat, an A sharp or B flat, and we're up to the B and C. Great. Now, enharmonic spelling is a basic musical principle that is very important to understand. But now that you do, it's great to know that you can spell the same note different ways depending on what note you came from, or depending on what scale or what tonality you placed that certain note. Okay, thanks very much you guys for watching, and I'll see you later on.